Hello, I'm Mike Ryan. I'm the Chief Networking Officer at PIMS, and welcome to our second season of Minutes with Mike. Now in my 33rd year at PIMS, I've had the privilege of partnering with companies both large and small, supporting their PR and marketing through customized fulfillment and distribution that delivers measurable impact on their brand perception, boosts positive affinity, and fuels their overall brand performance. And throughout my career, I've had the chance to work alongside many talented folks. This is their story. On this show, we'll sit down with some of the world's top marketing and business thought leaders to learn more about their success, how they got there, how marketing helped them achieve their goals, what strategies they used, and what inspires them. Please join me on this journey as we learn from those who are changing the way we think about business. So sit back, enjoy. You're listening to Minutes with Mike. Welcome, everybody, to Minutes with Mike. I have the wonderful pleasure of meeting my guest today, Adam Gam, who is the CMO of Perfect Corp. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you, Mike.
Adam and I were introduced because I had the pleasure of sitting in on a panel discussion during their tech forum, which was wonderful. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but let's just jump in, Adam. I wanted to talk a little bit about you and where you got your start. I know that you're a Michigan and Fordham grad, if I'm right. If I read that right on your LinkedIn profile.
Yes, I got my undergraduate degree at the University of Michigan from their business school, and I got my MBA from Fordham University, where I'm actually an adjunct professor.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Luxury marketing and events marketing.
Excellent. That leads me into my first question, which is, it's changed a lot, right? The way that marketing works from when you were in school to where you are now, right? And I'm 57. I'm not sure how old you are. I don't think you're quite that old, but we've seen a lot of change in our careers. Tell me how that changed for you. Like, what were you prepared to do when you came out of school? What did you sort of lead up to? What did you want to do? And how did you get involved in this world?
Yeah. So, I always knew that I wanted to do marketing. I really found that discipline to be really very interesting. I actually had a combined major in marketing and finance from the University of Michigan. And then when I went to Fordham, I continued along the marketing principle. But for me, it was always using marketing to understand what the consumers really wanted and need, and then how we bring those products or services to the marketplace. And I think in recent years, it's really been the inclusion of the digital marketing strategies, which are so important, and the consumer psychology, which is very, very important in being able to leverage data and analytics to predict marketing trends and have personalized customer experiences. And so I think for me, it's always been this idea of constant learning so that you stay on top of the trends, both from an academic standpoint as well as from a personal and professional side.
I stalked you a little bit. I was watching some podcasts that you were on. I was reading some notes about you. And I know that you got your start. Well, I'm going to talk about this for a second because I'm dying to hear the story. You had said that you did an internship at Kenner Toys, and you had something to do with one of the Star Wars toys.
Yeah, wow, that's going way, way back. Yeah, so one of my internships was at an advertising agency, and they were pitching Kenner for like the reboot of the Star Wars movies that were coming out. So I had to research all those characters and propose something to the agency. So even then, it was researching to kind of find like what might be interesting angles for the relaunch of the Star Wars movies.
Little did you know how popular those would become, right?
Yes.
You dove into it, but I'm just reading my notes here. You were on the alcohol end of things, right? You had a stint at Cuervo and Cobran and Diageo, and then you moved into L'Oreal. How did that work? How did you get into the alcohol and spirits world, and then what made you change from that over to the beauty end of things?
So actually, I've had like a really interesting journey. Some people think that it doesn't make sense because of all the different category jumps, but I really do think there's been a narrative. So I started out in marketing research. I was working at AC Nielsen and IRI, and then that's where our clients were beverage alcohol. So I wound up being at Diageo when they were first forming. So it's really as at the beginning of the company. I was working on their consumer insights group. And it's really interesting. If you know how to do marketing, it doesn't really make a difference, I think, the product you're doing, because the principles are the same. So when you're marketing a spirit, especially like a luxury type of spirit, you need to understand, again, the consumer's perspective and why somebody would call one brand over another, and why somebody would pick a top shelf brand over something that might be more mass and mainstream. And there's a lot of psychology that goes into why somebody will call a certain brand. And I find the same thing really true when it comes to the beauty industry. When you're looking at beauty products, there's obviously different tiers of beauty products that are out there. And ultimately, you're talking about a product in a packaging that you're able to like explain to a consumer what the benefits are, and then have something resonate within them that wants them to identify with that product. So I actually found the transition from spirits to beauty to be quite simple, because I think there were a lot of similarities, especially within the professional products division. And I was at professional products within L'Oreal. So that has a 3-tier distribution system where they're relying on distributors to get those products out to all of the salons. It was very, very similar within the adult beverage industry. And so again, I really think it's finding how consumers connect with certain products and why they want to pick one brand over another. And I actually think in today's marketplace, when you look at all these new brands that have kind of emerged, especially with the Gen Z kind of consumer base, they really want to have brands that represent them. And I think that it's those brands that, focus on lifestyle seem to be the ones that are kind of flourishing. And it isn't always just about the ingredients or what the product does, but it's really sort of what the product says about you.
It's a really good point too, and I would assume that you had worked with Redken, right, too, while you were with L'Oreal. Is that right?
Yeah, I was on Redken and Pureology and Matrix.
So just working with those brands even today, you're no stranger to customization, and I guess I would assume that's where that was born too, being able to tie in with this whole social digital aspect, the customization of the items that you're sending out to people, where Adam expects something a little bit different than Mike would expect, right? If it's something to do with sizing or shade matching or stuff like that. Like maybe.
Well, I mean, personalization, I think, is the key to everything. I mean, I'd say when you're in professional products, sampling. Actually, I think sampling is really important across the board. So I know that's where PIMS probably comes in a lot with sampling in the industry. But what I think is interesting within personalization is people want to have, again, a product that speaks to them. And I think that even is what made my transition when I went to Perfect Corp even that much more seamless, because we're using technologies, whether they're AI or AR, for virtual try-on or diagnosing your skin conditions with AI and AR. It's all about the personalized experience. So I think personalization is definitely king, and everybody kind of wants a product that's made just for them.
Agreed. I think that's where our two companies really work in cohesion with one another, is that type of personalization or specificity is where people are looking to engage these brands. Let's talk a little bit about the transition to the tech beauty world, right? So I mentioned earlier my age. I'm certainly no tech aficionado. In your world, you almost have to be, right? There's no getting around that. Perfect Corp is leading the way with this augmented reality and this sort of tech thing. How did you make that transition? You're still within that beauty world, but you're much more uber focused on the tech end of things versus the other.
So one of the projects that I was working on at L'Oreal was the introduction of virtual try-on for hair color. And I had experience with other companies that were, again, were the early stages for virtual try-on. And there were a lot of, I think, technical problems with those initial rollouts where the consumer experience wasn't very good. So for example, the technology may have worked, but let's say I wanted to see what I would look like if I was a redhead or a blonde or whatnot. The color wasn't applying properly on somebody's hair. Right. So maybe you'd get some color that was showing up on your shirt or like on the wall, or just the technology wasn't specific enough to be able to identify those facial landmarks and characteristics. And at that time was when I actually met a few individuals from Perfect Corp, and I saw the technology, and I knew right away that it was like magic, if you could imagine. I mean, the way the Perfect Corp technology worked was so accurate, it was so precise. And I saw that Alice Chang only really rolled out products if it was true to life. So as soon as I kind of saw that technology, I knew that I wanted to be part of that organization. And that's kind of where, when this opportunity as heading up the marketing department came to fruition, I was able to make that connection and then really let them know that this is an area that I was interested in. And for me, I thought it was really, really important within my career, because a lot of the marketing that was happening 8 or 9 years ago was really, really focused, I think, on sort of traditional marketing techniques, where everything for me now really has to do with digital, right? So these digital experiences, I think, are what's going to be, what's really leveraging the industry, all industries forward. And it's really kind of table stakes, right? So if you're able to incorporate a virtual try-on or AI or AR into a website, into an e-commerce experience, or even into a real physical store environment, and it can really help the consumer decision journey and really serve a practical purpose to solve a consumer pain point, I think then you know that you have a technology that is going to win and really help, again, move the industry forward, not only for those companies, but also for the consumer. Because if you can get the right product into the right person's hand and have them feel confident about it, and have them save money, not by having to return things or discarding it because it's not the right product, then you really know that you have something that's winning. And I think that when I saw that at Perfect Corp, I knew that this company was bound to be the success that it is.
I mean, you guys are really killing it, going back to that forum too that you hosted, specifically talking about enhancing the consumer experience. I know you're busy as the MC of the day and sort of introducing everybody and making sure everything goes well, and it was wonderful. But you would have loved the fact that when that whole augmented reality experience was brought to the main stage and Perfect Corp was going through the different variables where you can try on different hair color, hair styles, makeup, and it was just scrolling through the oohs and the ahs in the audience was
When you get oohs and ahs, that something good's going on.
You're hitting it. A buzzword that not too long ago was in the main forefront of everything that we talked about, at least on our end, and I'm sure in your marketing end, was that whole sustainability thing, right? People were getting away from wasted items, whether it be extra packaging or the containers themselves, or just the way that they do business. It's almost set in stone now that is a foregone conclusion that companies will have most sustainable packaging available or recycling available.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about that, because I know reducing the waste with these AI-powered try-ons is really a forefront of some of the things you're talking about.
And I know I kind of mentioned this before, but I want to go back to this, for a second. I think that to implement technology just for technology's sake, because it's something cool that's out there, kind of has an initial wow factor and then kind of disappears. It's not something, again, that becomes a table stake item or has the longevity. But if you're really having something that solves a consumer pain point and is what the industry wants, then I think you get things that kind of become standardized. And it's kind of a no-brainer to realize that every product in every industry right now really needs to focus on sustainability. So that's probably why it was such a buzzword at our event, and that's why so many people were interested in it. But virtual try-on, I really think, is that tool that's going to really help a lot of companies meet their goals for sustainability. So take, for example, product samples, right? So I told you initially that sampling is really, really important, and it is. If you sample somebody a drink and they like it, they're often going to buy it, right? If you sample somebody a lipstick or a product and they like the way it looks, they're likely to pick that up on top of something else they would do before. But when you think about how sampling was done before, right? A lot of times you have these like single-use pieces of plastic, or you had these boxes that people would send out where you would just get tons of samples, and it might not have been, for example, a foundation could have been in there and it might not have been the right shade. So what's the person going to do? They're going to look at it and say, oh, that's interesting. They might discard it and throw it away. They might put it into a drawer. They might try and find someone else to give it to, but it's just waste. It's waste from shipping. It's waste from the plastic just for the sample. And if I'm now able to use the technology to try on, let's say, 30 shades of a product in 30 seconds, and then have the company send me that one product that I like, or those two products that I like, then again, it's much more personalized. It's much more focused. I'm not having all this packaging waste. We also found that sometimes, even if it didn't even come to that instance of sampling, people which is really interesting because I mean, I guess in department stores sometimes there are samples, right? But if you go to a drugstore, there are no samples. So we heard a lot of instances where drugstores were saying that people sometimes would be opening up packaging in store, and then they had all this product they had to like waste and throw away. Or if you're able to use AI, so AI can tell you my skin condition and what might be a proper product for me. So it's all about, again, matching the right product with the right person so that we're, one, reducing the amount that people are buying, but actually getting them the right products, right? So that they're not having as much waste that's there. And I think then when people have confidence, they're likely to buy more of, or have more loyalty for that brand, or probably perhaps pick up another additional item. And I think what happens is sometimes people buy things, especially in the beauty industry, they don't like it. It sits in a drawer. You can't return it. You can't really donate a used product. And you have all these unused products that are just sitting there, again, creating extra waste that might go into a landfill. That's just one example. So I think you're definitely going to see AI, AR, and I'm just talking about trying on, but from inventory management, from ingredients, et cetera, helping to drive those better decisions, both on the production and the consumer purchase side.
Perfect Corp being at the forefront of that is perfect timing, right? Because you said it best. It's not something that's coming; it's here, and it's here to stay, right? And it's spread out through all of the opportunities, not just within the beauty world and PR and marketing, but like you mentioned just now, in warehousing and fulfillment on my end, right? This type of inventory control is going to be doused in AI, right? The quicker that we can figure out how to store things efficiently, accurately, with less of a footprint, something I mentioned during that panel discussion, is going to save time, effort, and ultimately the bottom line, money with these clients. So it's a win-win. I wanted to ask you a marketing question. So
Sure.
I had seen you had mentioned something once where you were comparing marketing as just, I think the term you used was a spoke, one of the spokes in the wheel of what business makes business go around, right? There's marketing, there's my world, which is networking, there is business development. How do you, with your team, how do you maintain clarity on that? Like what's on your end of things, what's in somebody else's wheelhouse? How do you sort of navigate that?
Well, the interesting thing about a marketer, I mean, I'm saying this from my experience, I feel most marketers would say this. They kind of have to be a jack of all trades, right? Because marketing seems to connect with all these cross-functional teams. You're going to be working with business development. You're going to be working with innovation teams. You're going to be working with finance teams and legal teams, and all the teams in the company somehow have an intersection with marketing. So you really need to be able to have strong cross-functional team skills. And I would say a lot of times, a lot of tasks fall into a marketer's role above and beyond the traditional things that they would think of, which is you think of communication or marketing strategy and objectives. But really, any of those points when you're touching a consumer or when you're doing the product innovation and ideation, somehow it does come back. There's a component that is involved with marketing. So I feel like a marketer's role does touch many other functions within an organization. And for me, that's what kind of makes the role so exciting, because you do really get involved, like I said, in so many projects in so many areas, and so much of what companies rely on winds up, I guess, laying on the foundation that marketers put out there.
Great answer. As you were talking, it occurred to me, now that we're post-COVID, the marketing world, right, had to do a little bit of a shift, right, in the way that they do things with COVID. I know on my end, we were, like everybody else, afraid about how it was going to work and how are we going to do our job, and are we going to remain open? Is everybody going to shut down? What'll be our life afterwards? And thankfully, knock wood, it really made us look at things a different way and pivot, right? The way that we were doing our business development was shifted forevermore because of the way that people now look at work, right? Some people are fully remote, some people are partially remote, but a lot of people cut down on their footprint size, right? So usually one of the first things to go is storage and warehousing capabilities. So we're able to sort of fit in and fix that niche. Talk to me about on your end with marketing. How did COVID change your thought patterns? What are some things you maybe changed around?
It's interesting because I think I talked about sort of like traditional marketing elements versus like these digital marketing elements. And I mean, you definitely saw a shift during COVID that everything had a focus on digital marketing. There was much more of a focus on lead and lead generation and like looking at that that funnel, right? So that trend had already started pre-COVID, but during COVID, you couldn't rely on physical events. You couldn't rely on in as many in-store experiences as you once did.
100%.
So everything did move to online. I also think it's really interesting because while COVID definitely had an impact on many businesses, for Perfect, since we were kind of a digital first company that had these digital experiences that cross both digital and digital worlds, and people were trying to look for things, again, the self-consumer pain points. So hygiene might have been one of them, right? I wasn't going to go into a store and again use a tester that someone else had once used before.
Right.
I mean, it's hard to even imagine that, right? Where people used to have testers and you were picking them up. That doesn't exist, and that doesn't exist anymore. So you saw this paradigm shift and an acceleration of people wanting to have these virtual experiences. Even things like this, which I know is a podcast, but even like everybody was on Zoom, everybody was on webinars. Yep. And I think what's interesting, and I even saw this in early days, I remember when I was at L'Oreal, we were trying to do a project with QR codes, right? And people were like, oh, in Asia, everyone's adopted QR codes. And it was like, in the US, people didn't know what a QR code was. They didn't know how to use it. And it's so funny. It took the pandemic for people to, because if they wanted to eat at a restaurant, they weren't giving out menus anymore. You had to scan a QR code. And it was really, really interesting during that 2020 time period that all of a sudden, all the US really embraced QR codes. That was not a new technology, right? QR codes had been out there for like many, 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 many years before. But all of a sudden that rise allows people to do more of these digital experiences from their mobile device. And now everyone has this device in their hand that really opens up a whole world of possibilities. So for me as a marketer, it was kind of implementing sort of this new norm. I think now that we're post-COVID, you see a little bit of it's like a pendulum, a little bit going back. People definitely want more of these in-person experiences, but still there's always this digital side. So if anything, there were obviously a lot of negatives from COVID, and that pandemic really, really did reshape the way people are thinking. But I do think it technologically advanced both the consumer and a lot of these organizations and companies to move that way. And that's why you're seeing a lot of things being virtual now. Even virtual and remote working situations were not the norm before, and now you're definitely seeing that they are. So I think that those companies that can lean into that and lean into those technologies are the ones that are really thriving and flourishing right now.
Agreed. You mentioned about data and analytics earlier. I wanted to ask you about that. Do you, how much of your strategy do you base on those data and analytics that can be garnered from things like live events or just marketing strategies that you had previously done? How much of that do you put? How much of your worth do you put into that? And does that seem to pivot as you go? And I'm just curious. I know there's a lot of companies and systems out there that are in this space. How do you navigate that?
I mean, I think data and analytics are extremely important for any organization and probably also in all functions, right? Because data tells a story. And actually, I learned that from my very first job. I told you I was in marketing research. So I think I sort of had a passion and a love for numbers and data and following the numbers so you can see a story and let the data show you where a trend's really, really emerging. So I kind of rely on that really heavily in everything that I do right now. I think even understanding what corporate events to go to, what conferences to go to, you could look at past years to see what kind of leads you got, what success rate you got with consumers. So I think you're always analyzing to do like continuous improvement. And so I think wherever you're able to look at a data or have that comparison, it really helps to sort of guide the ship, if you will. Obviously, I think there's also like an untangible part of this that isn't data, right? I think that a good marketer kind of has that kind of qualitative pulse on what's the next thing that's going to be happening. And you need sort of that in the mix as well. But again, people say numbers really don't lie, and they do help lead you in the right direction if you're able to mine them properly.
Numbers do not lie, and that's for sure. And it's really based upon customer satisfaction and relationship building and maintaining that customer base. How do you foster creativity? How do you manage your team to engage the people that are buying your product? What do you do as a marketer or a chief marketing officer to assure that people that are your source are continuing to buy your product?
Yeah, I think all marketers, and especially chief marketing officer, needs to foster creativity and innovation by encouraging open brainstorm sessions. You need to support risk taking, and you need to provide those resources for professional development and create a safe space for experimenting. I think it is key, right?
Love
So
that.
sometimes you heard that there are no stupid questions, right? You have to be open to that, because sometimes in that question or in that wacky, crazy idea is where you're really going to find the magic that's going to be the next innovation. And I've mentioned Alice Chang before, but I think she's an amazing leader. And the fact that she's always said to us, what's your crazy idea? Tell me your crazy idea. She's never been one that's kind of like shied from that. She wants to hear it. She might not agree with it. She might not give you the green light for it, but she wants to hear it, because
Wonderful.
it's those ideas that lead to the next idea or build onto something else. So you have to allow people to do that. You have to allow yourself to be able to listen to your consumers. I recently saw executives from Elf telling us how they've managed to have so much success over the last couple of years, and they're doing a lot of social listening. So when their customers are saying, God, I wish this product did that or that product did that, they're not waiting 2 years, 3 years to go and develop it. They say they kind of shorten their innovation timeline to take those little kernels that they're hearing from the social community and then put those products out in real time. And I thought that was really interesting that they realized the importance of shortening their innovation timeline with their manufacturers in order to incorporate these trends that are going on in the marketplace. So
Great
I definitely
answer.
think you need to be open and you need to listen.
Great answer. Love it. Talk to me about those trends. Next 5 years, what do you see as the next thing that's going to be? I know you're always looking sort of for the what's that next big thing and the landscape change. And what are you looking at in the coming months and years ahead?
Yeah, so the future of beauty tech will see even greater integration of AI and AR, offering hyper personalized experiences. Advances in technology will continue to blur the lines between physical and digital beauty interactions. And something that we're excited about at Perfect is this concept of like a perfect GPT or makeup GPT, skin analysis GPT. So taking our beauty and fashion technologies and combining it with generative so that you'll be able to have a real conversation with AI that will, where I could say, hey, I'm going to a party tonight. What do you think I should wear? Or, what would look good or what become, and then it will start saying, okay, well, let me analyze your skin or what type of looks do you like? So having that kind of that conversation with the technology, I think is really the next piece. So I think right now, we've just scratched the surface. You're seeing ChatGPT, which is basically text, but you're going to have all these experiences kind of rolled into that conversations with AI. So I really think it's a very exciting world to be in. Perfect, we're kind of calling it beautiful AI. I think that you hear a lot of scary stories right now about how AI is going to take over the world or there's some kind of horrible thing happening, but people aren't realizing that we've been using AI for years and that we're doing it kind of on a daily basis in a lot of processes and procedures that we're doing. And it's just going to become very, very native. So I think for consumers and maybe even for the media, you have to take a little bit of the scary part out of it. It's not all scary. Some of it's very, very helpful. And some of it, again, is going to be more personalized for me. So I make better decisions. And it's just kind of power in the consumer's hand. That's how I see it. So I think we're just scratching the surface of all of this, but sky's the limit when it kind of comes to these technologies.
Well said, Adam, and you and the team at Perfect Corp are killing it. So we're proud to be a partner of yours along the way. What advice would you give an aspiring? I'm in my third year of college. I want to be a CMO one day.
Yeah.
Especially in the tech end of things, what should I be focused on?
So I think aspiring marketing professionals should focus on continuous learning, again, embracing these digital transformation and digital technologies. I think we talked about this thing before, but we need to develop this data-driven mindset. And you want to build a strong foundation of both traditional marketing and digital marketing. I think it's crucial for success, especially in the tech industry, because at the end of the day, some of those traditional marketing components, there's a methodology for understanding when something's successful or not. but you need to figure out how to take those traditional methods and kind of incorporate these newer technology and newer digital tools that are out there.
Love it. Adam, the Chief Marketing Officer at Perfect Corp. It has been my absolute pleasure. I love the questions and answers, and I really appreciate all the feedback. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on, Mike.